Check one, check two. Man, I'm gonna try to get this one off technical difficulty free. First and foremost, let me say Happy New Year to all of you who are celebrating New Year's Day. I hope everyone is being safe, practicing the appropriate CDC guidelines in their celebration of this new solar revolution. I hope you got your mask on. Hope you're sanitizing your hands and you staying safe. Peace, brother Mark. Yeah, Happy New Year. NBK way. I hope you all enjoyed the previous videos by the God Rob Born and the brother True Storian. I thoroughly enjoyed them. Happy belated birthday to Dr. Ben. We appreciate Brother Reggie coming on and really giving us a lot of background history and knowledge about the time frame and how pivotal and important not only Dr. Ben, but Dr. John Henry Clark and John G. Jackson and a lot of those men who created what we now know as, Africana studies or African history. So in that, the time frame, I like to kick it in. So the title is a memorial discourse, and I think we got, a few people in. I appreciate it. For those who are currently viewing and those who are going to view in the future, I appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not. It'll behoove you to peruse through our catalog. I'm willing to bet that there's going to be some information that you're going to find that definitely sparks some interest to want to dig more and get more strenuous with finding out who we are and making sure that when our story is told, it's told in the proper way. Peace, Brother Chauncey Moore. So again, Memorial Discourse was a book put together for the Reverend Henry Highland Garnet, who was a Black abolitionist born from the plantation and via means like the Underground Railroad and other avenues got his freedom and was able to build a life with his family in New York. And he was able to preach in front of the House of Representatives, where he, in this book, A Memorial Discourse, is the address that stemmed from the 1843 Negro Colored Convention in Buffalo, New York, where there was sort of a debate in regards to the language Henry Highland Garnet used in his address. And this address is called, Address to the Slaves of America. And in this address, men like, Frederick Douglass suggested that its language may cause some type of insurrection. And Henry Highland Garnet stood up for himself. And, ultimately it was voted down. He had to change some wording. And the second reading was passed. But luckily enough, in this Memorial Discourse text that we're going to view here shortly, we're going to kind of review what he wanted to say in that 1843 address to the slave. So I hope everyone, again, is being safe. I hope in this presentation, you'll find something beneficial that you can take and run with yourself. See if I can get my screen shared. So before, let me get some. Let me get something going here. Please, family, like, share, and subscribe, share the show. Again, I truly appreciate everyone who's here. Peace, brother Niger Valley Civilization. If you haven't yet, family, please go subscribe to their YouTube channel. They got some great information. So before we get into the address of Henry Highland Garnet, first, I want to talk about the Negro Colored Conventions. Me and the God Rob Born in the past have done presentations on this. And if the sound is everybody can hear me, just let me know, and before I get too deep in the conversation. But starting in 1830 and 1831, the Black community began to organize. And via this organization, we began to have these national, and it wasn't just national, but local, state conventions where we would address the needs of the community, not only externally, but internally. We would write legislation. we would form committees whose responsibility was to report back in the next conference with some type of improvements. There was dues paid in the whole 9 yards. So this site that you see in front of you, please, open up a tab, look up Colored Conventions Project. What this is an online repository of the primary documents, the minutes of these conventions, and what these Africans, these African Americans and Black folks were saying for themselves. We don't necessarily have to sip on 2021 juice and try to interpret and, remix what, the ancestors were saying. Their words are right here for us to look at for themselves. The printing press was invented. You dig what I'm saying? So I'm gonna kind of get into the site. Please, again, open up a tab, look up Colored Conventions Project. Started in 1830 and continuing until well after the Civil War, freed, and self-emancipated Blacks came together in state and national political conventions. They strategized about how they might achieve educational, labor, and legal justice during the decades when Black rights was constricted nationally and locally, as well as during the intervening post-war years, before the very promise of a democracy that included all citizens was foreclosed again. The Colored Conventions movement took place during critical decades which witnessed devastating anti-Black race riots and the growing popularity of the American Colonization Society, the fugitive slave law, and the proliferation of derogatory representation of Blacks. The Civil War and Reconstruction and the return of Black disenfranchisement in legal, labor, educational spheres in the 19th century. Speakers at convention responded by calling for community-based action that gathered funds, established schools, and literary societies, and urged the necessity of organizing in what would become decades-long campaign for civil and human rights. The convention minutes collected here illustrate the immense struggles and the profound courage of those who made it a point to organize and stand for what was rightfully theirs. Again, family, open up a tab, Colored Conventions Project, all of the primary sources. And again, for every year, you're not going to find it, but from 1830 to 1899 to the Hampton Negro Conference, you see that Black organization. You see that continuation of what, the Richard Allens and Absalom Jones and Peter Williams Jr.'s, what they initiated. You dig what I'm saying? So look for that site. So we talked about 1843. So my mouse said, excuse me. Okay, here we go. So on the site, you have the luxury to search the conventions by year. So I'm going to scroll down to 1843. And this convention, by the way, was held in Buffalo, New York. So we're going to click on the link, boom. It's going to take us to the primary source. I hope everyone can see. It says minutes of the National Convention of Colored Citizens held at Buffalo on the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th of August, 1843. These is Black folks, African Americans in America during this time, and we're going to see what they're talking about themselves. And we're going to see how this discussion about this address of Henry Highland Garnet and how influential it was. And, how it kind of got a lot of people, got their feathers ruffled up. Please, family, like the show. So we're going to scroll down. I think it starts on page 12. Yeah, let me see. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I want the family to see this. Okay, so right now we're at the bottom of page 12. Now this is the part when Henry Highland Garnet is going to be elected chairman of this committee, and he's going to read his address, and we're going to read through the dialogue of how they express their opinions about some of the verbiage. So it says, the business committee reported by their chairman, Henry Highland Garnet, an address to the slaves of this land prepared for the occasion, which was read and accepted. Charles B. Ray moved its reference to a select committee of 5, of which he hoped Mr. Garnett, whose production of the address would be the chairman. Mr. Ray remarked that his object in moving it reference, let me move over, to a committee was that it might pass through and close and critical examination and perceiving some points in it that might in print appear objectionable, and to have it somewhat modified, and also that it might proceed forth in special committee of which the author should be the chairman and thus receive the usual credit due to a chairman of a committee's presented documents to public bodies. So this document that was going to be presented to public bodies was this address to the slaves. And this is Henry Highland Garnet's attempt to galvanize his African brothers and sisters in the South and elsewhere who was under the yoke of slavery, to not only yearn for their families to be free, but go up to their slave, quote unquote, slave masters and say, you're going to free me. If not, I'm going to free myself. Please also check out the NBK community page. I have a book recommendation by David Williams called I Freed Myself. In that book, it details the African-American participation during the Civil War. And not to get off topic, but we will get back on here. This idea that our ancestors just sat on their hands and were just ignorant to what was going on around them and waited for someone white to come save them is a facade. Channels like New Black Knowledge, and it's our duty to make sure that the truth be told. And this is what we're trying to do here. And I appreciate Brother Charles Goodwin, peace. Queen Cheetah, peace. YFNTV, peace. Donnie Williams, I appreciate Tone 360. I appreciate everybody for coming through and supporting the, the New Black Knowledge movement. Thank you very much. So let's get back to these community notes. Henry Highland Garnet arose to oppose a motion in reference and anticipating more than contemplated by the mover and fearing the fate of the address, the motion prevailed to proceed to give his reasons why the motion should not prevail and why the address should not be adopted by the convention, and set out with his sanction, in doing which Mr. Garnett went into the whole merits of the case. He reviewed the abominable system of slavery, showed its mighty workings, its deeds in darkness and of death, how it robbed parents of children and children of parents, husbands of wives, how it prostituted the daughters of the slaves, how it murdered the colored man. He referenced the fate of Denmark Vesey and his accomplices, of Nat Turner, the burning of McIntosh, to the case of Madison, Washington, as well as to many other cases, to what had been done to move the slaveholders to let go of their grasp, and ask what more could be done. If we have not waited long enough, if we were not time to speak louder and longer, to take higher ground and other steps, Mr. Garnett in his speech occupied nearly 1 hour and a half. The ruler having been suspended to allow him to proceed. It was a masterly effort, and the whole convention, full as it was literally infused with tears. Mr. Garnett concluded amidst great applause. Make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. Just to recap, family, we currently reviewing the Negro Colored Convention's minutes from 1843 in Buffalo, New York. The title of this build is called A Moral Discourse, which is a text put together by the Reverend Henry Highland Garnet. And in it, we see the address to the slaves that we'll get to here eventually. But I wanted to show the discourse among the convention members. And remember, family, for those who don't know, who are new to the channel, the Colored Conventions movement is a movement that freed and self-emancipated African Americans and Black folks started to settle issues internally and externally. For instance, legislation like Absalom Jones in 1799 to not only stop the slave trade on the Guinea coast, but also repeal the Fugitive Slave Act, not the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, that's more commonly known, but the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. So that's that, you know, Pan-Africanism or early phases of it. And these are the individuals that are around Henry Highland Garnet. They're coming up together. It's the foundation of the early Black community and, you know, what would be known as the United States of America. So again, please subscribe, share the show, hit that bell so you'll be notified when we go live. So let's continue. Frederick Douglass, not concurring with the certain points of the address, nor with the sentiments advanced by Mr. Garnett, arose to advocate his reference to the committee. And also to reply to Mr. Garnett, Mr. Douglass remarked that there was too much physical force both in the address and the remarks of the speaker last up. He was for trying the moral means a little longer, that the address couldn't reach the slaves, and the advice either of the address or the gentleman be followed with it might not lead the slaves to rise in insurrection for liberty, would nevertheless and necessarily be an occasion of an insurrection, and that what he wished in no way to have any agency in bringing about, and what we're called upon to avoid, and therefore he hoped the motion would prevail. So pretty much this language in this address, Frederick Douglass feared that it would cause slaves to insurrection. Of course, when he taught about, and we'll get to it, Henry Highland Garnet is calling for force. You dig what I'm saying? So Haitian Independence Day, January 1st, Haiti's the first. Yes, happy Haitian Independence Day, January 1st, 1804. Hold on, I'll put that on the screen for you. Shout out to all the family in the Haiti. Let me see. Let me get back. So let's get to what Mr. Garnett said. Mr. Garnett arose to reply and said that the most of the address said in sentiment with what the gentleman expected to was, and it was advised the slaves to go to their masters and tell them that they wanted their liberty and had come to ask for it. And if their master refused it, to tell them that we shall take it and let the consequence be what it may. This is Henry Highland Garnet, Buffalo, New York, 1843. They go to the let's go back and read that again. Mr. Garnett arose to reply and said that the most the address said in sentiment with what the gentleman expected to was that it advised the slaves to go to the masters and tell them that they wanted their liberty and had come to ask for it. And if their master refused it, to tell them then that we shall take it, let the consequence be what it may. Mr. Douglass said that it would lead to an insurrection. We were called upon to avoid such a catastrophe. He wanted emancipation in a better way, and we expected to have it. So they continue, going back and forth ultimately with this, trying to change the wording in the address. I think the next day, I think it gets to it here, where they changed, I think on resolution 3 here, you see in the middle of the page. So let me see if I missed anything in the chat. Appreciate it, fam. I know it's late. I know it's a late night. My bad if I ain't have my screen already like that, but we're going to keep pushing. So again, to recap, what we just viewed was a brief account of the Colored Conventions Project and movement, which started in 1831 in Philadelphia, that addressed getting land and moving to Canada because of, race riots, particularly Cincinnati, Ohio, 1829 and 1830, that carried all the way down to 1899 in the Hampton Negro Conference. And these color conventions was to deal with political issues and social issues that were affecting the Black community here in America, whether it was creating organs and newspapers like the Freedom's Journal, again, which is an MBK basic training. You got to know it. Freedom's Journal, 1829. Our first, this is what's important, and shout out to, I forgot the brother who did it, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a shout out anyway. Our first newspaper was a liberation newspaper, was an abolitionist newspaper in Freedom's Journal. Let's not forget. So let's get back here. Let me get this. And this text here, a more discourse, fam, is free on Google. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this link and I'm gonna put it in the chat. I'm gonna try to do a book recommendation from now on once every 2 weeks. You know, I want to at least give the fam time to read these books, or at least get these books before continuing to drop a lot of back-to-back text. And kind of the format I want to go this year is to drop a text and kind of do videos based off the text, so it gives everybody a time not to just read it, but you'll be able to highlight certain points within the text that's important. Because a lot of this stuff may not just be about us. It may be a lot of African Creole culture. So you may see some Caribbean folks and folks in Brazil, like Mosquito Coast and Nicaragua, that I got coming up. So I really appreciate everybody who tuning in and paying attention to the channel. We're going to continue to give the information about our ancestors, not just the slaves, but those who were freed and the communities and the organizations that they built. All right, so let's get to it. So we have a moral discourse by Reverend Henry Highland Garnet, delivered in the Hall of Representatives, Washington, D.C. on Sabbath Day, 1864. Let's see. And the introduction was done by Henry Highland Garnet. In the first few pages I'm going to read, just so we get, for those who don't know who Henry Highland Garnet is, this will give us a brief summary. Henry Highland Garnet was born 23rd December 1815 in Newmarket, Kent County, Maryland. His ancestors did not come over in the Mayflower, nor land at Plymouth Rock, nor kiss the barley stone at Pilgrim Fathers. On the contrary, his grandfather was stolen by slave traders from the coast of Africa, survived the horrors of the Middle Passage on a ship doubtless owned in Bristol or Boston, landing on the James River, and was then transferred to the estate of Colonel William Spencer at Newmarket, doomed to perpetual slavery. Himself and his heirs forever himself, according to Reverend Dr. Seabury, in exchange for the life forfeited in battle, and his offspring forever according to the same luminous authority by a term baby contract. Let's see. And yet his grandfather, shorn of his strength, was bound in bands of steel, and was noble an ancestor as humankind of desire. Of the perfect and physical makeup. He survived unscathed the Middle Passage, whose horrors soon arose Clarkson and Wilberforce to compass its destruction. Along with physical, he brought moral and religious power with him to Newmarket, which won for him a significant name, Joseph Trusty. So we see here that Henry Highland Garnet's ancestors are a product of what we know as a slave trade. So let's continue here. Where are we at? Please, family, like and share the show. So we about to get to a part on the bottom of page 5 where his family fled and got their freedom. So within a few weeks after the death of Colonel Spencer, a family exodus was planned and carried out in following manner. Permission having been obtained to attend the funeral of a relative and sometimes few miles distance, 11 in number started, and in the same night, on a sad errand, ostensibly but really in the hearts of the North Star, led up to its wondrous joys and the liberty-seeking slave. A covered marking wagon awaited them in the peace of the woods, then got in and kept till near day, where they left the wagon, concealed themselves in the woods until night. Henry's father, mother, sister, and 7 others, including himself, composed this company. They have not to this day returned from that funeral, along with all of them, except to the subject of this memoir, having bountifully partaken in the blessings of liberty, are gone on a longer and brighter pilgrimage. So Henry Highland Garnet's family ultimately escaped and got their freedom. So let's get to this address right here. Let's see if I made the text a little bit bigger. Please, family, like and share the show. So, to the slaves of the United States of America, rejected by the National Convention held in Buffalo, New York, 1843, by Henry Highland Garnet. So let's go. Let's see where we at. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's definitely a long address. So 227 years ago, the first of our injured race were brought to the shores of America. They came not with glad spirits to select their homes in the new world. They came not of their own consent to find an unmolested enjoyment of the blessings of a fruitful soil. The first dealings they had with the men calling themselves Christians exhibited to them the worst features in corrupt and sordid hearts, and convinced them that no cruelty is too great, no vigilance or no robbery too abhorrent for even enlightened men to perform when influenced by avarice and lust. Neither did they come flying upon the wings of liberty to the land of freedom. Progenitors of the system and their immediate ancestors very soon discovered its growing evil, and its tremendous wickedness and secret promises were made to destroy it. The gross inconsistencies of a people holding slaves who had themselves ferried off the wave of freedom's sake was too apparent and too entirely overlooked. The voice of freedom cried, "Emancipate your slaves." Humanity supplicated with the tears and deliverance of the children of Africa. Wisdom urged her solemn plea, pleading the captive plead his innocence and pointing to Christianity, who stood weeping at the cross. So we're gonna continue here. Where we at? To such degradation and is sinful in extreme for you to make voluntary submission. The divine commandments you are duty bound to reverence and obey. If you do not obey them, you will surely meet, you will surely meet with displeasure of the Almighty. And this is pretty much him saying that, if you were really a Christian, you wouldn't submit yourself to any forms of enslavement. So we at the bottom of the page. The diabolical injustice by which your liberties are cloven down, neither God, no angels, or just men command you to suffer for a single moment. Therefore, it is your solemn and imperative duty to use every means, both moral, intellectual, and physical, that promises success. If a band of heathen men should attempt to enslave a race of Christians, and to place their children under influence of some false religion, surely heaven will frown upon the men who would not resist such aggression, even to death. So first, there's this idea that, those who choose to subscribe to Christianity or whatever belief system are docile. This is a example of, it's not necessarily for everyone. This is a Reverend pretty much telling, what we're going to see, telling Africans to pretty much fight to the death to secure your freedom. Brethren, it is a wrong for your lowly oppressors to keep you in slavery, as it was for a man thief to steal our ancestors from the coast of Africa. Brethren, it is a wrong for your lowly oppressors to keep you in slavery, as it was for the man thief to steal our ancestors from the coast of Africa. You should therefore now use the same manner of resistance as would have been used in our ancestors when the bloody footprints of the first remorseless soul thief was placed upon the shores of our fatherland. Whew. Let's go. Where we at? Middle of the page. We're about to point you to the more effectual door. Look around you and behold the bosoms of your loving wives heaving with untold agonies. Hear the cries of your poor children. Remember the stripes of your fathers bore. Think of the torture and disgrace of your noble mothers. Think of your wretched sisters loving virtue and purity, and they are driven into concubinage and are exposed to the unbridled lust of incarnate devils. Think of the undying glory that hangs around the ancient name Africa, and forget not that you are native-born American citizens, and as so much you are justly entitled to the rights that are granted to the oppressed. Think how many tears you have poured upon the soil which you have cultivated in unquenchable toil and enriched with your blood. Again, family, this is 1843. So hold on, I think I jumped the gun here. And he says, and then go to your lowly enslavers and tell them plainly that you are determined to be free. Appeal to their sense of justice and tell them that they are no more right to oppress you then you have to enslave them, entreat them to remove the grievances, burdens which they have imposed upon you, and to remunerate you to your labor. Uh-oh. Where we at? Point on. Let's go. And inform them that you all desire is freedom and nothing else will suffice. Do this and forever else cease to toil for the heartless tyrants who give you no other war but stripes and abuse. And if they commence to work for death, they and not you will be responsible for the consequence. Hold on, fam. You had far better all die immediately than live slaves and to tell your wretchedness upon your posterity. If you would be free in this generation, here is your only hope. If you must bleed, let it come once rather than die freemen, than live to be slaves. And then he goes in, fellow men, patient sufferers, behold your dearest rights crush the earth. See your sons murdered and your wives, mothers, and sisters doomed to prostitution in the name of the merciful God. And by all its worth, let it no longer be debatable to question whether it's better to choose liberty or death. And then he goes in, DeMarc Vesey, Nathaniel Turner. He talked about Joseph Seneb on the Amistad, Madison Washington. You know, this is Henry Garnett in 1843. And just to recap again, by the title, this is a text written, an introduction by Dr. James McCune Smith of Henry Highland Garnet's address to Congress, as well as the address to the 1843 Negro Colored Convention in Buffalo, New York, that was voted down based off some of the same verbiage that I'm reading here for you now, which men like Frederick Douglass and others feared that this would incite an insurrection. Pretty much Reverend Henry Highland Garnet. In here you see, brother, arise, strike for your lives and liberties. Now is the day and the hour. Let every slave throughout this land do this, and the days of slavery are numbered. You cannot be more oppressed than you have been. You cannot suffer greater cruelties than you have already. Rather die freemen than live to be slaves. Remember that you are for millions. So this is an address by Reverend Henry Highland Garnet to the enslaved, to rise up against their quote unquote enslavers and to liberate themselves. And ultimately, in the subsequent years, we did that. And that text that I put on the community page, I Freed Myself, definitely goes into that. Another one, Forever Free by Eric Fine, is a good start if you wanted to get into some of this understanding of not only the Black political movement, but the mobilization and the willingness of quote unquote contraband to enlist in the armies of the European to liberate themselves. Actually, speaking of voting rights, yes, some Africans had voting rights. I think in New York, at the time, you had to have at least $250 worth of land to vote. And there were some Africans who had that amount of land that were allowed to vote. So early on in this country, voting was based on how much land you had. And based off the, Bill of Rights and the Constitution of this country, which is something that our ancestors used. Just to go back to that petition in 1799 by Absalom Jones, he quoted the Declaration of Independence in the Bill of Rights. It doesn't identify slave nor Black. So, those who are born in this country are citizens of this country. Oh, excuse me. Drop my phone. I'm going to ask because I had a professor once that covered this period. He called us enslaved Africans literally into the 14th Amendment and started saying African American. I can understand where, they will come from in regards to saying that, I thought, what is it called? The acronym or whatever, free citizens vote, the 14th Amendment. The 13th Amendment made you a citizen. The 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment subsequently secured your citizenship and your voting rights. What was the New York voters law? I got to look the New York voters law, but I'm pretty sure that it required you to have at least $250 worth of property in order for you to be allowed to vote in New York. I want to say it was based off the amount of property you had. But Danny, this is his arena. I'm pretty sure he'll be able to answer that question in the comments. I bought it, were considered property. You mean, Brother Donnie, I don't know if you mean the enslaved Africans or the book. Let me see. Everything is everything. Peace, Brother Kofi, Podside TV, Darren Taylor, peace. Everything is everything. Shaz. Did the free Africans have isn't this about 25 years? That sounds good. Let me see. So that's the address. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. And I threw that joint in the disc. I'm gonna throw it in the Discord also. It's gonna be in the description of this video. But we just gonna continue to give you the primaries, give you those Africans, those black folks at the time telling you, or speaking for themselves, quite frankly. So, there's no presupposition here. You can get it for yourself. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I know it's late. I know y'all probably about to go to Waffle House or something. So I'm not going to hold y'all too long, but I definitely wanted to start it off the year with something powerful. I thought, excuse me. Oh, no, it's all good, bro. It's all good. Shout out to Texas. Shout out to San Antonio. We appreciate y'all for coming through, rocking out with New Black Knowledge. Please, if you haven't, go on Google Books, check out more Discourse by Henry Highland Garnet. Is riddled with speeches and the whole nine in there for you. Henry Highland Garnet's address in 1843 was to incite the enslaved to riot and rebel against his enslaver. Or that was the mindset of men like Frederick Douglass. Henry Highland Garnet was like, hey, there's nothing wrong with identifying the immoral enslavement of me and asking for you or for those who have me enslaved to let me free. And if they don't let me free, to take it by any means necessary. So we see even before Malcolm X, God bless the dead, we see Henry Highland Garnet in 1843 saying, give me liberty or give me death. It's no question. So I appreciate everyone for coming through, supporting the movement, New Black Knowledge. Please, if you haven't, join the New Black Knowledge social group on Facebook as well as the YouTube group. If you haven't yet, I'll try to put the link to the Discord in the description after the video is posted. A lot of the book recommendations are the things that we kind of discuss on this channel, as well as the community page. I'm telling you, fam, everything that we build upon is on. I'm gonna put it on the community page. I'm not gonna stop. Appreciate the brother, the God Allen for showing that earlier. I'm gonna keep using that as a way to try to give you as many primaries as possible. To when you doing your studies and your readings, you got something to, you ain't gotta read 4 or 5 books written by authors who were born, 40 years ago. You can go read what Henry Highland Garnet said for himself. You don't have to worry about Louis Gates or none of those other professors. You can go see what Henry Highland Garnet said, what Alexander Crummell said, what Absalom Jones said, what David Walker said, what T. Thomas Fortune said in his article, Who Are We? There was no question about where we come from. So let's put that to bed and start anew in 2021. Now we passed that. Now we on making sure we get a good understanding of the organization and the foundation of the early Black community. Not only just here, but also in places like Nova Scotia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Shrebo Island. For some more information on Shrebo Island, check out my video I did about Daniel Coker and the establishment of that island. Man, I hope I covered everything. Shout out to the whole team, NBK 2021. We only getting stronger. We appreciate all the support, all the likes, all the shares, all the super chats. Thank you, Donnie Williams, that y'all give. This is definitely a dope thing to see like-minded individuals and interested in this type of history and continuing this study group type, even though we're evolving in this century. So we're gonna keep kicking out information. Like, share, and subscribe. Again, share the show. Thank you very much. I got 17 in here at 2:30 in the morning. I really appreciate. Let me see. I'm gonna check one more time. Yeah, Henry Highland Garnet. Check them out. Open up a tab. Henry Highland Garnet, Negro Colored Conventions Movement. I appreciate everyone for coming through. Peace.